I love cat people.
The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para-X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Step outside of your comfort zone. See the world with a whole new perspective. Join us and experience the unexplained on the Paranormal View.
And welcome everybody right here to the Paranormal View on the Para-X Radio Network. I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight. Those here in the chat room and those listening from around the world, we appreciate each and every one. So tonight we got a great show lined up for you, and I have pretty much everybody here, and I have no idea where that TikToking's coming from.
That would be me, Henry.
I don't know, but I like it. It's eerie.
I thought, I was like, what is this? One of those countdowns when they do a premiere of a YouTube video? Or something?
I was trying to get it to stop, and I said, "Man, it ain't nothing here on my end. There ain't nothing I'm doing stopping it."
All I could think was, is Henry doing a new intro? Or,
All right, tonight, though, we have with us Barbara Duncan.
Hello, everyone.
And we got Geoffrey Gould.
Hello, hello.
And we might have Tabby Cat on to say a word or two here and there, but I believe she's with us. She's still not feeling good from that tooth being pulled and everything, so I'm sure she's still on with us, but she's listening anyway. So with that, we got a great show lined up for tonight. Got lots and lots to talk about, and I'm going to let Geoff introduce our guest.
Yes, our returning guest tonight is author Don Allison, the recipient of numerous Associated Press and United Press International awards for his many feature and column writing. He's got his start in journalism when he was in high school and is a sport writer and photographer. Don has written extensively on the war between the states, drawing from on knowledge gained from a lifetime study of that conflict. Don is a co-founder of Faded Banner Publications, which publishes books on the war between the states and Northwest Ohio history. Available at Amazon, their own site, fadedbanner.com. So welcome back, Don Allison.
Well, thank you.
All right. I see you got the TikToking shut.
Actually, it's still going. If it's an irritation, I can stop it.
I don't hear anything now, so
okay.
I'm good.
It's an antique mantle clock.
Oh, neat.
Oh, so
it reminds me of that Edgar Allan Poe story, The Telltale Heart.
Yeah, it would.
It's perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a physical clock that just happened to go up on the hour.
Yes, it is a chime clock, yes.
Nice.
I'm so used to it, I didn't even give it a thought before we came on.
No, what we need to do is we need to tape that and put it into one of our intros because it is sinister sounding.
Wow.
I love it.
I'm sure we could get a clock ticking and put it in.
We need the chime in there because it really sounded neat.
The chime too. Maybe we get the Tower of London when it's chiming.
That's copyright, but we can have Don tape it for us.
Oh,
I could do that. It is probably over 100-year-old clock.
Wow.
That was reworked.
Wow. So.
We get him to have a time at 8:00.
Wow.
Get the chimes in there, and it will be our intro. See? That's how we do it.
Well, like I said, we got Don on tonight, and my first thing is we never asked you how your wife's doing.
Oh, she is doing great. She's back to work. She's cleared to drive now, so doing very well. Had some foot surgery, but recovering well.
Well, that's good. That's good. So, is there any other strange things that's happened in your house since the last time we talked with you?
Yeah, I have had a few things, or we've had a few things. I think I'd shared before about the 1870s sliding door that I put into place for my home office. When I first put it on, for one thing, when I did the work, all my battery-powered tools immediately went dead. I had to use plug-in tools. First 3 days after it was in place, when I went to the other end of the house to eat lunch, it closed on its own. It stopped that, but then over the last maybe 6 weeks or so, it's closed 3 times on its own. And it takes a pretty fair amount of energy to close that door.
Is it like a rolling door, or is it a hinge door?
It's
okay.
Yeah, it's on a track. The door itself is actually a pocket door from an 1870s house. It was salvaged, and it's on rolling tracks. And the door is like 7 feet tall. It takes 2 people to lift it physically.
Wow. That could hurt. And it just slides on its own without any trucks going by or anything along those lines.
It would take like traffic going.
Oh, great. I lost everybody. Hang on. Now I have to get everybody back on. So just hang on a minute here while I get this done.
Is stare downs into our dining room. Obviously, there's something there that attracts his attention. And he bobs his head. If you nod at him, he will do that back. He will still do that when nobody's in the other room. He hasn't done the peekaboo thing, though.
Oh. Has he developed any more colorful language, or?
Yes, he is not in this room for that reason.
Oh boy,
he's been a naughty bird, huh?
Yeah, he's a hilarious bird. I will say that.
Well, that's funny.
Well, I mean, we keep talking about how animals are probably more susceptible or sensitive to the paranormal than humans are, and it sounds like your bird is a great example of that.
Yeah, he really is, and there's no doubt that he is reacting to something in the room, and he acts just like he's reacting to a person, like he would react to us in the other room.
Well, I think animals have a sense that they can sense when there's a spirit around or a ghost, and I would assume that some way or another they react to it.
And I don't doubt that that's correct, because, and I may have shared before that one time when the bird was, he was playing peekaboo, even saying peekaboo. So I picked up my phone. I had an app on it, an Ovilus app, and I walked over. He kept staring at the corner of the room. I walked over to the corner. It was perceptibly colder, and I got the name Nathan, and I believe the last name Andrews when I asked the name. And I could find no connection of that name to the house in research I've done, but I found that very intriguing that I actually got a name.
Wow.
Now, have you ever, it's hard to say if anybody's ever spoken the phrase peekaboo in the house around him, but we talked before about minor birds and birds with speech, if they would be the ultimate EVP machine.
Yes, and I found that intriguing, but he has not repeated anything beyond peekaboo. And he hears us. We will do that with him and play peekaboo, but it just seems strange that he's playing peekaboo with an empty room. Something had to set that off.
Wow. So do you have a cat or dog?
We have outdoor cats. We have one cat that is indoors. She was hit by a car, and we're going to nickname her Lazarus. I can't believe she survived, but
wow.
She had some damage. So she's an indoor cat. We have to keep the doors closed. Luckily, we have an old house with small rooms,
right?
So we have to keep the bird and the cat apart.
So has the cat ever reacted to anything in the house?
Not that we can tell, but we've only had her in the house for a couple of weeks.
Well, they'll sit there if they're seeing something. They'll sit there and just kind of crouch and start staring. Our cat even does that sometimes, and we've never seen anything in the house or heard anything, so our house seems to be fine.
We had a Cocker Spaniel in our previous house, and she would do that. She would all of a sudden just kind of quickly turn her head and just stare, into the adjoining room when nothing was there.
Awesome.
Jeff, you still with us?
Yeah, I'm typing up stuff.
Oh, okay.
What are you saying?
I just wanted to make sure that I didn't lose you.
No, not yet.
Okay.
It's early.
It's early.
By the way, John, I'm sure you said they kept the bird's name, but I blinked.
His name is Rusty.
Oh, Rusty. Okay, there you go.
Awesome bird. Rusty deserves his own Facebook page.
He would probably run with it.
Probably.
So, I mean, as it goes with COVID, it's been a lot quieter outside and a lot less ambient noise on there. Are you seeing or sensing anything more around your area that would be normally wise, like even with cryptozoology or UFOs or anything along those lines?
Not really. With COVID, I haven't even done much paranormal investigating. I've really turned more to researching some things, but no, it's been kind of quiet. There have been some investigations in the region. I did take part in one last fall, and that's the last public investigation I've done.
And where was that at?
That was a little town called Rudolph, Ohio, near Bowling Green. It was a former school.
Huh.
It was a very interesting building.
Did you catch anything there?
Yeah, my favorite of the whole night, we were just about done, and the organizer was trying an experiment. He was using lasers and a smoke machine, and the idea is if any spirit would pass through, that this would show the shape of it. And it was late at night, and the guy was having trouble. He kept bumping the lasers over. While he was setting it up, there was a spirit box sitting there, and we were getting nothing on it. It had been going, and no one's really paying attention. I was standing right beside it, and after the gentleman knocked over one of the laser lights for the third time, clear as a bell, we heard from the spirit box, "Dumbass." Everybody just died laughing. There was no question what was said.
Wow.
That was my favorite of the night.
Well, did you get any? Did you use your recorder? Did you get anything on it?
I didn't get any EVPs. I was using. I had a little SB7, but I wasn't recording, and we did get some responses. The part of the school had been turned into an apartment, or apartments, and in one of those we were getting just some interesting answers, no names, but just responses that I'm here. I think we did get a few kind of nasty swearing comments out of it, but
wow.
What was the school? The grades in the school?
I believe through the years, I think it had been just about all grades, but I think at the time it closed, it was elementary.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
And this is the Westwood School, or?
I think that may be the name of it. It was in Rudolph, and that sounds familiar. That it may have been the Westwood School.
Wow, hadn't heard of that one.
Nor had I, but I found it. It even has a Facebook page literally saying Haunted Westview School.
Wow. Well, you know, and I believe it's in September, they have the thing down here at the Post Town School. People be set up and everything, and vendors, and you can walk around and look. And I think later in the evening, they have a regular investigation. And it's run by a guy from up north there somewhere in Indiana, I believe. And it's a real old school, and it's pretty nice. The guy that owns it has an apartment in it and lives there. He bought the whole school. So it's all fixed up, and you can go in, wander around, and investigate in that too. So I've been there, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, 5. I haven't walked through it to investigate, but I have been down there and broadcast a show from there, and also I have set up as a vendor there.
Yeah,
but all these old schools are wood, pretty much wood floors and all of that. That kind of probably creak back and forth, right?
Yes, they can be kind of problematic if you have a lot of people investigating. You have to be really careful, from carryover noise and so forth.
I know the main floor in this one's concrete. The basement's concrete floor. I'm not sure about the floors above because it's like 3 stories or something like that. So I'm not really sure about the upper floors. But sound does carry into place, so you have to be careful if you're trying to investigate. So let's see here. You whoa, I didn't do that.
Oh, someone just drove by in your living room there.
It sounded that way, didn't it? But I didn't do it, so I don't know.
That was outside. We're on US 127, and a rather large truck went by.
Oh. I
guess I have a sensitive microphone tonight.
I was getting ready to say.
Many years ago, we had a morning show that had that always made fun of their traffic guy, who was located on Route 22 in Westview, New Jersey. And one day he literally had the window open, and this clearly 18-wheeler was kind of come barreling past, and the host just screamed, "Look out, Joe!" I laughed like 10 minutes.
So I know there's areas up there that you've investigated that's haunted. The train track was one. Wasn't there a tower there also?
Yeah, we have. It's the granary.
Right, that's it.
The old elevator, and the elevator tower is there. That place was absolutely amazing. We had some public ghost hunts in Bryan last year, and it was we had to shut that site down. I was helping lead tours, and the tour that my wife and I were leading, actually a person was scratched, a young girl, and she was very upset. The group after us, somebody actually passed out. They said her symptoms were basically like diabetic with low blood sugar, but the person was not diabetic. And because of concerns, they shut down that site for the rest of the night. We did no more investigations.
Wow.
Very foul-mouthed, mean spirit there. I can't even begin to repeat most of what we were getting on, on the ghost boxes there.
What was the name of this granary?
It's the old Bryan Granary. Actually, it was featured on America's Most Terrifying Places.
Right, I've seen that with you.
Yeah, and so I was involved with that one. And there were a number of deaths on the railroad tracks there. Very tragic one where a young mother crossed the tracks to get one of her children to come home. A train was coming. A child darted ahead of her across the tracks. She ran to try to stop her child. Her child made it across, but she was hit by a train. And this would have been right about the autumnal equinox, and the tracks run straight east and west, so the sun was probably blinding her. She probably couldn't even see the train. And basically, her body was just dismembered by the force. It was pretty horrible, really. Wow. And we actually got her, I forget her name, I believe it was Jenny. I think we actually got her name to come across on the ghost box.
Huh.
Well, granaries are pretty treacherous anyway.
And
it kind of makes you wonder if anybody else has fallen in those things.
We do know, and we didn't know at the time that was filmed or that we had the hunts, but in later research we found that there was a man who was involved in repairing or installing some of the machinery, and he got caught in the machinery and was crushed to death, and he was alone, and nobody could hear his calls for help.
Wow.
And he died there. This was in, I believe, the 1920s.
Wow. Well, even grain silos, I mean, you fall into one of those and you're not going to come out.
You get sucked under the grain, yeah.
Yeah, no buoyancy.
So do you think that's why it's haunted?
I believe, because I was amazed at the building. The first time I ever set foot there, one of our local paranormal groups was given permission to investigate there, so we were scoping it out. I was invited to go along with them, and I wasn't in that building. It was less than 5 minutes, and I clearly saw a shadow figure dart across.
Wow.
And we weren't really equipped to investigate, but one of the people there with us did have a recorder, so he tried for EVPs, and immediately we got a very menacing "get out" answer.
Wow.
As an EVP. So that was my introduction to the building.
So I know, working with the newspaper, have you had any stories or sightings of UFOs?
No, I have not. However, in my historical research, there were a rash of UFO sightings back in this area in like the 1870s.
Really?
Yeah, which I found fascinating.
Huh.
One was a couple of people fishing on the Tiffin River, not far from here, and the newspaper account told it was like a cigar-shaped flying object that they saw. Long before aircraft, and really balloons would not have been something you would expect to see at that time either, dirigibles.
Well, it must be kind of good. I mean, the whole idea of the newspaper aspect of this, and it's kind of like the Kolchak thing. And, you know, I used to do some radio where we actually had an AP wire hookup in the old days, in the 70s or so, that, you know, it acted like a typewriter.
Uh-huh.
So I can imagine just the types of stories that came over the news wires. Some of them just must be to the point where you kind of scratch your head and go, I wonder what that's all about.
Yeah, it was a fascinating career. Working in newspapers, and I got to edit our daily paper here for many years. And yeah, part of my job as editor was working with the Associated Press wire. And there would be the obligatory October, haunting stories, but just kind of news of the weird almost. You would see a lot of those kind of stories.
How big is the circulation for the Bryan paper?
When I became editor, we were right around 12,000. But as the case with most newspapers, it has fallen, since that point.
But that's still for a small area. It's still a lot of papers.
Yeah, our county is fairly populous for a rural county, and the paper really we strive to cover our entire county and even overlapping areas of adjoining counties that maybe were underserved. So. At one point, our paper was number one in the state for market coverage, so we were pretty proud of that.
That's awesome. Wow. But, it's interesting when you stop and think about the printed media now and how much more coverage you're probably going to get via the internet, and probably even, Don, your books, maybe the electronic versions sell fast too? Do you think that's a help?
Yes and no. I sell more electronic, more ebooks than I do print books. What has hurt me during COVID is I do a lot of speaking and public appearances, conferences and different things, historical groups, and a lot of those things have been canceled. And that's kind of my business model, is the personal appearance. So that's hurt the print sales, but I've been able to make up at least part of that with a lot of online presence and promotions, and the ebooks do well.
Yes. Well, you have some good books, though. Very interesting.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I try. I've had a lot of practice, so I have a lot of fun with it. And I retired from the news business to focus on the books. I still write my weekly column. They ask me to do that, and I have fun with that.
Well, I think that COVID has hurt a lot of people being able to go out and investigate places, because a lot of them shut down for a long time, and they're still trying to do having get-togethers and stuff. But with it coming back, I don't doubt that they probably either make everybody wear masks or cancel a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, and I've been kind of picking and choosing. I do have a couple of events coming up in the next few weeks. I'll be speaking at a Chicago area Civil War roundtable. I spoke to last year to that same roundtable, and because of COVID restrictions, they had about a third the crowd that they normally would have. I think those have been released, so that it should be a fairly good crowd, and that, of course, helps with book sales.
I come across, I guess, somebody in the family somewhere along the way, and I had a lot of this stuff stored before I moved here, and I was just going through some papers, and I come across it. I've got like 2 pages, it looks like about 31 names of foisters who was in the Civil War, and it gives their name, whether they're a Confederate or Union, tells whether they were infantry, cavalry, and so forth. A sharpshooter, one was a sharpshooter. So I haven't gone through it and tried to look any of them up, see who they are. I typed in 1 or 2 of the names, and I can't get to them unless I join their particular site or something to get the info.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
But that's a neat list.
Yeah. So, but it's pretty interesting. So, what other, have you been down in the southern western part of Ohio investigating any places?
No, I haven't investigated that area of Ohio. I know there's some interesting places down there.
Right.
Down in your area.
Yes. I know there's a great place that we used to go at least once every year, every other year with my wife's sister and husband, was to Put-in Bay. Have you ever been over there?
Yes, I have.
That's a nice place, interesting.
Very much. I've never investigated any place there, but I have visited.
Oh, I haven't either. Haven't even tried, but it would be interesting. It had a lot of history to it.
I had a friend in college from Put-in Bay, actually.
Now,
So
obviously, it's not a bay, right?
It's an island.
Actually, it is on an island. There's a famous battle in the War of 1812, Battle of Put-in Bay.
And that's where they defeated the British on the ships. They had a naval battle.
Yeah, but they weren't playing the big old overture, were they?
No. I forget, what was the commander's name for the American fleet?
Oh, it's terrible that I can't. That should be right at the tip of my tongue.
It was Commodore somebody. And
Commodore Perry.
Yeah, that's it.
It's
Commodore Perry.
named after him, yes.
Yeah, and he defeated the British there, which saved, I guess, them coming in from the coast, or from
saved from coming up, say, the Maumee River, and really creating havoc.
Yeah, interesting. But it's a real nice place. They built a real big tower there that you can take elevator, go up to, and you can walk around on the top, and you can see the whole area, and you can see Canada and everything from there.
Yeah, it's a beautiful view. And actually, that whole area, the Lake Erie Islands, is just one of my favorite places in the world, really.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
I see. It's Put-in Bay.
Right.
Yeah.
Put-in.
It took me a second. I typed in Pudding Bay. Thinks accent off.
There's a hyphen.
But then it came up as Put-in Bay. I'm like, oh, I guess that's like Stratford-on-Avon or something.
Yes.
Real interesting, though.
But
It does look nice.
But I am getting kind of anxious to get out and do some more investigating. I have a friend, actually, from Bryan who is getting into building ghost boxes, for ITC, and I have one of his new boxes that I'm trying out, and I'm really anxious to give it a go, see how it works.
Huh. If they would make them to where when you're trying to run it, it doesn't have the sound of it going through the channels. That. If they have that quiet to where it just picks up a voice that comes in, that would be good like that.
That's why I always hate spirit boxes, because you'll be watching at one of the TV shows, and you're
yeah,
and you're like, well, clearly he's reciting the Gettysburg Address. I'm like, what?
That is the downside. Now, when you're getting good results, though, the voices will override that. But the downside of them is so often you're getting something, but you just can't make it out.
Right.
And that's the frustrating part.
Now, I had a friend who had one that did, because he was big into electronics, and he had it wired to where you wouldn't hear that sound. You would only catch a voice when it come through.
And that's what I'm hoping to be able to do with this box. I haven't had chance to really play with it yet. I haven't had it very long. But like the little SB7s, the noise can be really troublesome.
Yes. So if you can ever kill that and just let the voice come through when they talk, that's the way to go. If you ever get that fixed, let me know. I'll
see how this box works out, and maybe we'll be able to make a Gettysburg trip, and I can bring that along. And I haven't been to Gettysburg all year, but I will be going in early September. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I haven't been since 2020, I guess, was the last time we were there. So I don't look forward to going back there because of the COVID. And if it opens up, it's going to be jammed with people. And if I get to go over there, The next time I go, I should say, would probably be my last time going over there. I don't travel too much anymore now, so have you done anything else around any of the places here in Ohio or Michigan or Indiana?
Really lately, no. I just have not done much investigating at all. So many of the things that I would do did not take place. I love the old mill at Dundee, Michigan, and I've taken part in their Parafest, been a speaker there, but last year that was a virtual event, no ghost hunt. I really was disappointed that I didn't get to go there. I've not done a lot in Michigan. Really, I still do a good majority of my investigating at Gettysburg, and I have not been there since about a year ago.
Yeah. Well, last I heard was the COVID cases is shot back up, so I don't doubt that they don't shut it back down again early this year.
Yeah, and I will not be surprised if they have some restrictions put in.
Yeah.
But I guess it's wait and see. I know that the tourism's up because I know places that carry my books. I have been ordering books and doing well with them this summer, so that's been nice.
So
and in
how
summer,
do you determine?
they're not using it as. I was
Go
saying it's summer, so they're not using it to keep warm in the winter.
Yeah, that may come later. Maybe they're laying it up for the winter.
Barbara?
So how do you determine, or do you research what sites to go to, or do people contact you saying, hey, I have this site you might want to investigate, or do you actually comb through books or the media looking for spots?
A little bit of everything. I have a lot of contacts in the paranormal investigating field, and I rely a lot on what people are doing. I'm not a member of any group, but I've investigated with a number of different groups, going along with them. So I'll often go where they're going. I sometimes just will on my own do something, if I can get permission or it's a public site. But yeah, it's a little bit of all the above, really.
Yeah, I have.
Or do you ever just
Go ahead, Barbara.
Do you ever just look in a paper and some site just sort of says you need to visit here? No, I'm serious. I mean, sometimes you see these houses and what have you.
Sometimes you just get that feeling. Just like one that. We have a gentleman who is in Bryan. He was a World War II veteran, and when he returned home, he just was not right, and he actually laid in wait and murdered a young librarian when the library was closing at night. Very brutally murdered her, and it received national attention at the time. And it took a few days to figure out who did it, so there was a lot of kind of terror around the town, and really nationwide his trial was covered and the whole murder case. Well, he went to prison for many, many years, and in the late 1980s, he was released and came back to Bryan. And he was very creepy. He used to stand across from the library where he'd murdered the librarian and just stare at the library. I had to deal with him. He would come into the newspaper, and I just never cared to deal with him. One time with two coworkers, we got caught in a rainstorm on our way back from a coffee break, heading to the paper office. We took refuge in an overhang at the library. And taking refuge with us in that overhang of the library was Jim Engel, the gentleman who had killed the librarian. That was a little bit unsettling. But after he died, he took care of his elderly parents. And then after he died, he was buried just a half mile from my house.
Wow.
And just on a whim, I took a spirit box to his grave and I said, Jim, are you here? And I got to hear very clear, yes, I am. And I did not expect that, and I just turned off the spirit box and really wanted nothing to do with it. I didn't really want him following me home.
It didn't scare you, did it?
Yeah, that was probably bothered me as much as just about any paranormal experience I've encountered.
Wow.
And I don't know what possessed me to even have done that, but...
So he killed the librarian. Did he go to jail for it?
Oh, yeah, for many, many years. And actually, I found out after he died, I wasn't supposed to have been told this because of HIPAA laws and so forth, but the reason he was allowed out is he was given a lobotomy.
Oh, wow.
Maybe but he still was creepy.
maybe that's why he just sat there and stared.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, the murder took place in 1946, and I think that lobotomy was early on.
Oh, yeah. That was lobotomy era.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we always talk about, what is scarier, the dead or the living, because the living can do more harm. But in this case, when you have somebody who was like that alive and then dead, do you ever start to wonder whether or not these, some of these ghosts of convicts or psychopaths, etc., might be stalking people?
I have heard accounts of that happening. A paranormal investigator I know personally has had something follow him home and create some havoc in his home. I have never had anything like that. Like I say, probably the Jim Engel thing is the closest I've encountered to it. We have very active spirits in our house, but they seem very benign. But the one at the granary rather disturbs me. He is very foul-mouthed, and the fact that that's really the only investigations I've ever done where I've actually personally seen and then been close to somebody being injured and, having a really bad reaction, like losing consciousness. So some serious things can happen.
And what about those things that maybe aren't human?
I've never encountered anything that I've been aware of, but I've heard a lot about the, those types of things, elementals that they talk about. I've just not had any personal experience with that sort of thing. I have had some experiences that maybe should have been unsettling. And if Kat's on, this happened to Kat and I in 2019. It was in September. But I was at Gettysburg, and Kat came up, and I wanted her impression of Little Round Top and the Alabama Brigade. I had ancestors at Gettysburg. I was interested in her impression, and we were standing at the Alabama monument, the Albanian monument, as we had talked about earlier. But no, Kat and I are talking, and I saw behind Kat several human-shaped, semi-transparent figures walking up behind her. And I thought I was hallucinating, but Kat all of a sudden whirled around. One of them had come close behind her, and she whirled around and said, "Don't sneak up on me like that." And at least the figure I was looking at moved back about 10 feet. There was some behind that figure that stopped. These were plainly Civil War soldiers. You could see the muskets over their shoulders. They were basically what you often see ghosts depicted as. They were human shape, human movement, semi-transparent. You could make out even the details of the uniforms and the hats they were wearing, but no facial features. I could see hands, but not individual fingers. And they obviously were reacting to us. That was mind-blowing to me. And maybe I should have been frightened, but I wasn't. I was just astounded, to be honest with you.
After we have about 17 cats connected to the show, which cats are you referring to? Cloco or?
Oh, I'm sorry,
Tabby
cat, tabby cat.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we've got about 17 cats here.
Pretty much. Is that the only? Do you see apparitions? Are you inclined to see them, or is this the first time that you saw anything like that?
The first time in my life I had seen a human-shaped apparition. I had only seen shadow figure once and some shadows before that point. And we saw many more of them. A little bit later, we drove around to Little Round Top, where my ancestors fought, and I think there were about 24 of them eventually gathering around and looking at us. It's one of the most astounding experiences of my life. But they had no sound, although Cat Gash was getting communication from at least one of them who told her that his name was Sam and he was connected to me. I could find nothing of any ancestors named Sam, but I would have had a lot of ancestors, like great uncles and so forth, in the brigade there. So it's possible that this is an ancestor. But I could see him. He was very short. Kat said he was very raggedy. I could not see the detail to that point. But I say I probably should have been frightened, but I wasn't. I was just absolutely astounded.
Well, you know how it is sometimes you're given two names, or in like Scottish culture, you're given 3 first names and then your surname. That they didn't want that and just went by Sam.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And could have been a nickname, or I probably have not exhaustively searched every branch of the family.
Mm-hmm.
The Southern family, a number of surnames: Champion, Wholesomebacks, Goodwin, are 3 of the names that there were relatives of those names in the Alabama Brigade at Little Round Top. So,
but then sometimes they also have a prank to them. It's like, this guy's looking for his brother. You want to play his brother this time?
Yeah, you have to wonder how much of it is that too. Yeah, but I do know these. I mean, to the degree, one was about 2 feet from me, and he was well over 6 feet tall, and I did not see him come up beside me, and I turned and he was there, and I was, Kat noticed I was very startled by that. I mean, I could see he had on a short-cut shell jacket. He had on a small brimmed hat. Looked to me to have a blanket roll, but no gun. The ones we saw at the monument had rifles, but most of these at Little Round Top did not, which I found that difference interesting as well.
Wow. I bought a book, and I forget what store here in Ohio that I was in, one of the small towns. It's called Haunted Ohio by Charles A. Stansfield Jr. Have you read that book?
I think I have, yes. I think I have that book here at the house.
It's got a bunch of ghost stories, I guess, all around Ohio. And pretty interesting. I bought the book so I could read it and maybe get to go to some of these small places.
Yeah, maybe that's something we could get together and do sometime. I would love trying that out.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah. And I know there's places that I've investigated around here. A couple of farmhouses, and I think one was an antique shop, and different things like that. The antique shop I could probably still do. That's in Ross, Ohio. But the farmhouse, I haven't been able to get back in there since last year sometime. Early last year, I guess it was. And I haven't gotten any places right around where I live at right now. So, because I haven't been out trying to look. So, hopefully if this ever clears up a little bit where I can start doing some things, I'd really like to.
Yeah, there's a place I really enjoyed investigating right here in Bryan. It's the former Methodist Church parsonage. And it was pretty amazing. We were getting, with the ghost box, conversations in German. Couldn't understand what they were saying, and it almost appeared to us like they didn't know we were there. But one of the investigators was sitting at a piano, and he played a few notes, and that prompted singing in German, which I found rather interesting. But while this was going on, we could plainly hear children running around and laughing upstairs. And they would run partway down the stairs, but if you would go to investigate, you would hear them running upstairs, and if you went upstairs, there was nothing. No more sound, and this kept repeating. And I was standing with my back. The stairs came out to the main front door. It's an 1870s house, brick house.
Right.
And I had my back to the main hallway, and the stairs would have been behind me heading toward the front door. And I distinctly heard footsteps at the bottom of the stairs and then in the hall. And I spun around just in time to see a shadow disappearing into the adjoining room. And several people in the room gasped and said, "Wow, did you see that?" And they saw a clear human, like a dark shadow figure, human form. I just caught kind of the end of it, out of the corner of my eye, shadow moving.
Now, is that in Willoughby or in Bryan?
It's right in Bryan, and actually, it's next to the former church is now a restaurant, Father John's Restaurant, and the parsonage is served as a bed and breakfast.
So, do they offer investigations there, or do you have to have a group to go in? Or
at that particular time, it was part of some public investigations in the town. I do know the owner, and I have been in one other time just with a paranormal group, and he has given different groups access, and I'm sure if I asked permission, I would be allowed, as long as there were no guests that I would be disturbing.
Right. Well, maybe sometime we could set something up and do that. That would be interesting.
And the restaurant itself, when they were doing excavation and doing some remodeling to make it into a restaurant, they uncovered a grave in the basement. And they left it intact, but covered it in plexiglass. So if you would like to eat in that room, you can actually eat and see the coffin from the grave.
Oh, boy.
Wow.
Well, it's not like it was open casket or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, that might be a bit interesting. And I believe it's probably a very early Bryan burial, would have predated the church.
Wow.
Oh.
So what's the
Well,
name?
I mean, there was a fad with glass-covered covers on the coffins, so hopefully that wasn't the case here.
Yeah, the coffin is enclosed. I know a gentleman I did some Civil War reenacting with back probably 25 years ago, and a relative of his had been disinterred, and it was in one of those zinc coffins with the glass window. And he actually had the coffin at his house briefly before it was reburied.
Wow.
I thought I would have found that rather. I didn't see it myself, but I heard about it. That would have been interesting to see. But I guess those do a great job of preserving the bodies. I know one of those down in Nashville, a Confederate colonel that was killed in the fighting around Nashville, was buried, and in recent years, maybe 15, 20 years ago, grave robbers dug up the body and broke the coffin open because they wanted to steal the uniform and so forth, which they did, and they thought the body that was found was the recent murder, a gunshot victim. The body was so well preserved until they put two and two together and realized Shy, I believe, was the colonel's last name.
Wow.
And they put two and two together as to what had actually happened.
Yeah, that happened in San Francisco. Somebody was digging up their garden, etc. Back in the day when, there were a lot more cemeteries in San Francisco than there are now. And they dug up a or a lead coffin with glass covers on it of a little girl.
Yeah.
Wow.
She was buried in another site later. But still, yeah. I mean, they were very popular back in the 1800s, I'd say.
Wow.
Yeah, for the well-to-do. I know they had them during the 1860s, and I'm assuming probably beyond that as well.
So what was that name of the former parsonage house?
The restaurant is Father John's. It's a former United Methodist Church in Bryan. It's also a brewery, Father John's Restaurant and Microbrewery.
Okay.
But now you're saying that the former Methodist parsonage is now a bed and breakfast. Does that have a name?
I don't know that he has a name for that, just beyond the former parsonage.
Wow.
Great. Now I have to do more digging.
Give you something to do, Jeff.
Yeah, really.
But yeah, John Trippy is the owner, if that's any help. Trippy.
Wow.
That's awesome name. Yeah.
Now, there's a place in downtown Hamilton that I used to do all the time. It had been sold, and it used to be a bar restaurant, but it was sold, and it's now a Mexican restaurant, and they don't allow any investigations in there. But we used to go in there to Ryan's Tavern, and you'd get stuff. They had all kinds of stories of things that went on in there. It had a second floor, third floor. You'd go up on the top, take the elevator up, and while you was up there, the door would be closed on the elevator, but you could, be investigating. But when you turn around and look at the elevator, you could see something walking back and forth because it's about an inch or so gap at the bottom of the floor, maybe not quite that much, but you could see the light from inside the elevator, and you see a shadow going back and forth across it.
Wow.
You go over and open the door up, and there's nothing doing with the lights. Lights ain't moving or anything. So, I did see that. So
yeah, those are really just kind of wow moments to me.
And we have an antique shop downtown Hamilton that it's not an antique shop. It's a museum, the Butler County Historical Society Museum. And I've been in there a few times investigating and done a show live from there. So if you ever come down, maybe I could go in there and do some investigating or something.
Yeah, that'd be great. We'll have to get together and do some of those things. I would love that. I'm just anxious to get back into investigating. All
right. I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we'll do some more talking. With that, Jeff, you want to take us out for break?
Yep, you're listening to the Paranormal View on para-x.com with hosts Henry Foistier, Ceiling Cat Barbara Duncan, and absent Taboo Cat, and myself, Jeffrey Gould, with our guest author, Don Allison. So stay tuned for more Paranormal View after the break.
Whether you're listening at home, at work, or anywhere, thanks for making Para-X part of your day. Your source for everything paranormal. Para-X.
And welcome back, everybody, right here to the Paranormal View on the Para-X Radio Network. I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight. Those listening in the chat room and those listening from around the world. Tonight we have with us Barbara Duncan.
Hello, everyone.
And where do we have listeners at tonight?
We're coming in from all over the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Spain, and Poland.
All right. That's a whole lot of people, isn't it?
Yep.
And we have with us Jeffrey Gould.
Hello.
And we have the tic-tac clock guy, Don Allison.
Hello.
I kept
I
turning that.
still think that clock is amazing.
Yeah, we'll have to say I love the clock.
Yeah, we did hear it tick-tocking, though, but that's okay. It wasn't real loud, so that's all right.
I keep expecting somebody to come in and say, "We're here to solve the murder."
It's interesting that the ticking stays really loud after it chimes. It's not going to be. I may see whether or not how comically intrusive it is for the YouTube version of this. But
yeah, I can stop the clock if it's a problem. That would be no problem at all.
I don't hear
No.
I don't hear it
Well, you
ticking
can't
now.
stop it. But I mean, does the ticking kind of taper off audibly later, or does it just is it like part of the being scary?
Not really. I kind of am used to it. My aunt left me the clock. I've had it for many years and kept it wound, and it's just part of life for me. It's here in my office.
Wow.
It's totally cool.
I know. Have you ever been? Well, you was talking about a graveyard a while ago. Have you ever been walking through a graveyard or going there to see somebody that's family member or something like that, and talked with them and had your recorder going?
I have not tried that. I don't know. I have never felt right really investigating graveyards. I don't know why that is.
I went to where my grandma was buried, and I just went over there and talked with her for a few minutes and told her I just wanted to come by and say hi and all this stuff, and I don't know, I talked for 3 or 4 minutes. And finally at the end, I just said, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with me or whatever, and didn't get a response from her. But the recorder picked a male voice up a little ways away, said, "No, thank you."
Wow.
I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that is.
So,
I will have to share one story a friend of mine told me. He and a buddy put a recorder down in a graveyard, and later they played it back, and they got what they thought was a very interesting EVP. And they actually spent money to have a sound analysis done, and the answer back was, don't eat tacos before you go investigate. Apparently, my friend's person who accompanied him's stomach growled, and that's what the EVP was.
Well, Don, I live in Hollywood, and we have a very famous cemetery called Hollywood Forever. A lot of celebrities and old school actors and such. And a friend of mine took a digital recorder into one of the main mausoleums, and in an area right near Peter Lorre and Rudolph Valentino. And he said into it, is anybody here? And he puts it down, and he goes out. Completely empty mausoleum, apart from the, prone residents, as it were. And he went out, got his girlfriend, and came back, retrieved the recorder, and they're driving off. And this is back when it was analog. It was actually a cassette, not a digital. And they put the cassette into the dashboard playback, and they had to pull over when they realized that they heard something. They played it back. You could hear him saying, is anybody here? You can hear it being put down and his footsteps disappearing. But before his footsteps came back with his girlfriend, you hear somebody go, I can't act.
I can't act.
Oh, wow. Wow. One of the favorite EVPs I've heard, I was not there when it was recorded, but the people who recorded it played it for me. This was in Gettysburg, and they were in a Union Field Hospital building. And they asked do you know that you won the war? The North won the war. And when they played it back, they heard a couple of voices hollering, like, yeah!
Huh.
That was very interesting.
Wow. Now, I know I get a lot of EVPs from like private residences that I've investigated because people called us in, wanted us to investigate or something like that. And I have gotten a lot of EVPs from those kind of places. So I really like those. I don't necessarily, you go to these big box places, get a whole lot, because I feel like that because they're big, famous, and they have groups in there all the time, that it's kind of like hunted out, you might say, to where I'm pretty sure that the people that are there is tired of everybody coming in. Can you talk to me? Blah, 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 blah. So, but I do. People has said different things about the private homes that they have, and I get more stuff that way.
Yeah, one of the things that I have found interesting since my paranormal books came out, I met a ghost and I met more ghosts, is that people I know, some people I don't know, contact me, emails, calls, particularly after I've given a talk, and sharing things with me. And during this downtime with COVID and so forth, I've turned to doing some research and compiled some things, and I've become very fascinated with after-death communication phenomena. And it's kind of a wide open field, anything from seeing a past loved one to hearing them or having just an uncanny coincidence happening that reminds of the loved one. But the idea of the fact that people have contact with the recently deceased, to me, is fascinating. I have a coworker at Sauter Village, but when he found out that I did paranormal books and was researching this, he said, well, let me tell you about my experience. This was years ago. He was an employee at Dana Company, and he apparently was working third shift, and he and another gentleman were tow motor drivers, probably moving things around. It was generally pretty quiet, and it was an older gentleman who trained him, and they didn't really get along very well at first, but they kind of got to adapt to each other. This guy was older, so my friend called him Dad. He said just to kind of get under his skin, and they'd kid back and forth. They got to the point where they'd play like hide and seek with their tow motors and radio clues and whatnot. But my friend showed up to work one night, and they told him, well, you'll be alone tonight because his coworker had just died of a heart attack that evening. And he said he was kind of bummed out, actually. He said it was right before Father's Day, and he was actually going to take his coworker out for Father's Day since he was older, and he jokingly called him Dad. And he said during the night he came around a corner, and over in an aisle was his friend flipping him the bird and laughing, clear as a bell. And then he looked back and the friend was gone. He said that really made an impact. And there's so many stories like this. Another young woman that I know lost her husband at a young age to cancer. And she confided in me that they have two young boys, but she was in the kitchen and her late husband was coming through the kitchen wall, partway through, like he was trying to get through, and then it was like something pulled him back.
Huh. And
she... I think she just really wanted some confirmation that, no, you're not losing your mind. People see these things. A very recent one that just out of the blue wasn't even told to me. It was told to Diane, but a good friend of hers, she and her husband purchased a house that was built by an older couple we were friends with. And they were the ones who lived in the house forever. There was one owner briefly in between, not for very long, but Diane's friend told her, just at a recent visit, that she was totally just really thrown for a loop. She woke up in the middle of the night to see an older, short-statured lady bending over her bed looking at her. She said she screamed and ran out of the house. She described the lady, and the description she gave was Virginia, the older couple we knew, the wife that had built the house and lived in it for decades. I found that fascinating. But there's just so many of these accounts, you can't even begin to recount them all. I've had a great many of them shared with me. And I'd love to learn more about what's behind it. I think it's kind of an under-researched area, really. And I don't know if you guys have had encounters like this, or people have shared these with you, or you have thoughts on it.
Well, there are a lot of different tales of people coming back, and I know there was one skeptical scientist who said, just did not believe in the paranormal at all until he had I think a radio that belonged to his father, and on the anniversary of his father's death, the radio turned on. It didn't work before. So I think that there are means that people communicate. I mean, you had it in your house with that child at the computer, right?
Exactly. Leaving the handprint. Mm-hmm. She's been seen. We've never seen her, but two other people have. Two people who didn't know each other and gave the same description. Kind of amazing, really.
So I suppose that they find ways to communicate. I guess it would have to be personal for somebody to understand what the communication was if it wasn't an actual physical manifestation, right?
And sometimes it is something as simple as actually hearing a voice. I have heard a voice in my house, a young woman's voice once. I came before we lived here. We were restoring it. My wife had left her purse in the house on the main staircase. I came in the main front door, and as I'm picking up her purse off the stairs, I heard a young woman's voice in my right ear, like right next to my ear, say, "Be sure the door's locked." And it about bowled me over, like, whoa, what did I just hear?
Yeah, I kind of believe those more than somebody calling out your name, simply because we expect to hear our name all the time. But in this case, you weren't expecting any voice whatsoever, and the fact that it was lock the door makes it even more credible.
And about that time, we had somebody try to break in those very doors. They broke out the windows and actually damaged the lower latch, or it latches into the threshold. It's a big old 1800s double door, but they could not gain access because there's no way to unlock the door without the key.
Wow.
So that kind of added an even another layer to that whole experience.
Like maybe they tried before and she was warning you?
Yeah, and it looked like it had been damaged once before, but this happened actually maybe a week after I had that experience is when that break-in occurred, or attempted break-in.
Wow.
Another one that has always really stuck with me, the night my mother-in-law died, my wife and I were with her. We went to our in-law's house. Our father-in-law was hospitalized at the time, too. And they had one of the older cassette tape answering machines. And just as we wanted to see if anybody had called, was wondering about anything. And so we rewound it. And just so happened, the place that we stopped the tape, when my wife turned to play it back, was her mom saying, just calling to check in with you. Something to the effect that, I'm okay, love you, bye. Wow. And it's like, whoa. And the odds of stopping at that particular spot are so remote that you almost have to think something was behind that.
Wow.
Wow.
I know the house that we used to live in, it was built in 2003, 2004, because we bought it new in 2004. And I guess it had been a field. It was now a subdivision that they was building new homes in. And I never had any problems or anything like that there. But there would be times I'd be upstairs in my computer room, and right across the hall from my computer room, we had a bathroom. And one night I was in my computer room doing stuff, and I heard Patsy upstairs, and she said, "There you are, little girl." And she was talking about our little female cat. So I got up and went over, opened the door, and asked her, what she was doing or whatever. Wasn't nobody there. So I went downstairs and I asked her, what'd she want? She says, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you've just upstairs talking with the cat." And she said, "No, I wasn't. I ain't been upstairs." So I used to get things like that, different voices like that, but nothing malicious or anything like that. So I don't know why it would even be haunted, or why I would even hear stuff like that from somebody who's still living.
Yeah, we get that here in our house. There are times that, it hasn't been all that long. I guess you were asking if things still happen in the house. I happened to be up late working down here in my office, and Diane had gone upstairs. This was probably 3 or 4 months ago, and I plainly heard Diane come down the stairs and then go into the living room, turn the other way from the hallway to my office. But I didn't hear her go back up, which I found was rather odd. So when I then went into the other part of the house to go to bed, nobody was there, nothing was disturbed. When I did go up to bed, she was sound asleep. And I asked her the next day, "Did you go downstairs?" "No." But it was plainly her footsteps, barefoot or slippered footsteps going down the main staircase. Just one time, and this one still puzzles me. I was home, and our schedules are such that Diane would get home usually a half hour or 45 minutes after I did. Well, I was home in the house, and plain as day, I heard the front door open and close, just like Diane would always do it. Like I heard her put her purse on the table, and then I heard steps going in and then on into the bathroom, and then nothing. And I went, and I was surprised to see nobody there. And okay, but it was her sound that I hear every day. And about 10 minutes later, the front door opened, and the same sound almost exactly repeated, even going in, walking into the bathroom, but that was her this time, like 10 minutes later.
Wow.
I think there's a term, I think they call it a doppelganger,
Really?
Something, one president in two places. I thought, wow, that's just like some kind of time warp or something, but it was plain as day. It
kind of makes you go back to the theory of residual haunts, where the same thing keeps repeating over and over again, and whether or not it's possible to haunt yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And see what I'm saying?
Yeah. And there is actually a theory about sounds, a couple different theories. One, and the name of it's escaping me, but iron oxide, that basically, say the nails in a house that have some rust on them, that if atmospheric conditions are right, the theory goes that sounds can be recorded, just like the iron oxide on a cassette tape. If you have the right static in the atmosphere or whatever, and just as they can be recorded, that they also can be played back.
Huh,
and
really?
That's a theory that has always intrigued me, and that would be a possible explanation for some of the residuals that we hear, in the house here.
Well, that house that I used to live in, I could be laying in the master bedroom watching TV, and one night I was watching the ball game, and I could look straight across to the stairs going downstairs. It's across the middle room and the stairs, and I just happened to glance up, and I seen a silhouette of a a female, and I assumed it was Patsy, just back real quick, going down the stairs. And I called out, nothing. I got up and went downstairs, said, what'd you want upstairs? Says, I ain't been upstairs. So, I mean, we would see things and hear things like that all the time in that house. But this house, quiet. Nothing here. So
I have friends that I house sit and cat sit for, and there's this magnificent, well over 100-year-old Victorian house that absolutely has nothing. And I tell them, what is the point of having this magnificent old wood home and no ghosts?
But then there's other things that you really have to wonder. And here's another one that I don't believe I mentioned when you asked about things happening in the house recently. And this was not too long ago. I fell asleep in the recliner. And I woke up at maybe 2, 3 in the morning and got up to go to the bathroom. And I got out of the recliner, latched it, got up. And as I'm walking to the bathroom, the recliner opened on its own as if somebody pulled the latch. And then about the time it would take to walk into the bathroom, then the ground fault interrupter switch in the bathroom tripped very loudly, clicked. And I found that intriguing because I had a very similar thing happen years ago upstairs before we moved in. I went into the upstairs bathroom, and outside in the room, I heard what almost sounded like somebody dropping a book on the floor. I was alone in the house, and I actually heard footsteps come to the bathroom door, and the ground fault interrupter switch in that bathroom clicked off.
Huh.
And it was almost a repeat years later. I thought, now that's intriguing.
Well, you used to have all sorts of different things happen in that house when you was remodeling to start with before you could move in.
Oh, it was insane. I mean, almost every day you would hear footsteps. Radios would turn off and on, change stations by themselves. I thought I was going crazy at first for a while. The other people experienced it, and that kind of put me at ease then.
Well, Don, back when I lived in Montclair, New Jersey, we had this beautiful 3-floor house, 15 rooms. It was well over 100 years old. In fact, the earliest we could find anything on it, we couldn't find the exact year it was built, but the earliest record we could find was some renovations in 1911. But we had, my brother saw a woman in black walking through the halls. Now, my dog and cat never raised a whisker, so there didn't seem to be any problem. But I had a friend visiting from New Hampshire, and she knew nothing about the house. She was very sensitive. I went out and grabbed some sodas and came back, and I was gone like 7 or 10 seconds. And she said, we're the only ones home, right? I said, yeah. She says, I hear someone walking on the second floor. And I said, oh, that's just our ghost probably.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, we would get a lot of that. I know one time I was in the basement alone, working in the basement, and plain as day, somebody was walking, and this went on for like 5 minutes in the room above me. But I went up to check, and there was nobody there. My brother-in-law was doing some wiring for us alone. He had the exact same experience, only we were working outside. He was alone in the house, but he was rather bothered. He said, who the heck was walking around up in the library? And it's Gene, nobody's been in the house. And he had a very funny look on his face, and he went back to doing his wiring.
But you found a lot of history about the house. You even found stuff in the basement, a gun.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, and quite a bit. It was an Underground Railroad stop. 4 Civil War soldiers grew up here. 2 did not make it home. The parents of those soldiers both died in 1863, just a few days apart, apparently, of a fever. So there's really quite a history to the place.
And that's the house that you live in?
That's correct.
Wow. I know, you say it was used for Underground Railroad too?
Yes, and we were surprised by that. We didn't really know much about the history when we bought it, but the builder of the house was the founder of actually the church we attend, Pulaski United Methodist, and that was sort of the headquarters for the Underground Railroad in our county for a time. So he was very involved, and after he died, his daughter and son-in-law had the house, and they were kind of the movers and shakers of the Underground Railroad. So, and it's right on one of the main routes, and we really were impressed when we were doing some renovation. They're actually putting in ductwork for our heating, and we found the frame for a trap door leading up to the space but between the upstairs wall and the outside mansard roof where you could hide people. And this style house was noted for being used that way on the Underground Railroad, both because of the ease of hiding people, and then that style roof was a signal to the runaway slaves.
Wow. Where would they go to?
So did you ever try putting tape recorders in the hiding areas to see?
I have not. I have very strongly avoided doing much in the way of investigating here because we have such a peaceful coexistence. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe it's crazy to think that way, but we don't want to provoke or antagonize anything. So we do not investigate the house, and we've had a lot of people ask to, and we've turned them down.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No, nothing like stirring something
Well,
up, that's for sure.
There's also the other side that you wouldn't be antagonizing or provoking them. You might be saying, like, an invitation, like, hey, come be part of the family. And they're like, okay.
Yeah, and it could be that would work. I have on occasion when something has happened, I've used dowsing rods. That's one of my favorite techniques, actually, and gotten, clear yes/no answers. Are you here? The one time the bird was playing peekaboo, we got a name on an ovulus, and I have tried the spirit boxes very briefly. Is anyone with us? And gotten some answers. One of the former owners of the house that died in 1863 was Henry and Margaret. And I was asked, is anyone with us? Yes. And who's here? And I couldn't really understand. I said, are you Henry? It sounded like Henry, and I got a yes.
Huh.
So,
wow.
But that very limited things like that.
Well, at least they're friendly, so I wouldn't worry too much.
Yeah, we feel very comfortable. The vibe of the house is very good.
Except the one that keeps playing pranks on you.
Yes, having things missing, like I probably shared my screwdriver story. I had a workbench in the living room before we moved in. One day I came out and all my straight slotted screwdrivers were gone out of the drawer. Didn't take the newer Phillips ones, just the straight slotted old-fashioned ones. And I found them all eventually in odds and ends spots hidden here and there. Very odd.
Wow. Well, now,
And then you have the spirit that's teaching Rusty bad language.
Yeah, I think either the spirit or my youngest son.
oh.
I'll have to confess, he picked up the S word from me getting irritated with the computer, and that's his new favorite.
Oh. Sherry in the chat room wanted to know if the ghost guy still objects to your music.
I have not for quite a while had a problem with the music, and I still play the music. And I don't know why that doesn't seem to be a problem anymore, but it does not. I've not had an issue. My gut feeling is the same spirit that objected to the music is the one that did not like my sliding door. And I don't know if I mentioned the final time initially when I put the sliding door in that it closed. That third time when I came in, I sat down and 2 books came flying off my bookshelf, took out a commemorative mug, broke the mug. And when I got up to see what's up with the books, a can of compressed air came flying off the armoire where my computer is across the room. The compressed air can hit so hard it broke the top of it off.
Really?
And I think that's the same spirit that didn't like the music. And I actually spoke out loud and said, look, you can be here, but you're not going to be breaking my stuff. Do not break my stuff. And he didn't close the door again for a long time after that, but he has resumed doing that now.
Well, they like to have fun.
I think a lot of it is fun. I might have shared having my underwear snapped working behind the house. Nothing was there. Nothing could explain that. I was by myself, bent over, my underwear quite forcefully snapped.
Wow.
And I cannot explain that to this day.
Nothing like a ghost wedgie.
Yes. That one, I just have to laugh at that one.
They just want to keep you on your toes.
Yeah, my theory is I think they want us to know we're there.
Right.
Just kind of some reminders. Hey, we're still here.
Mm-hmm. That's the way that I would look at it.
Yeah, but you don't acknowledge them, do you? While you're in the house, you don't talk to them, per se.
No, not as a general rule. If, like I say, when something's been broken, I have, and there are times I've just kind of had to laugh at things that have happened. Like, we do occasionally, things just are moved, and we cannot account for it. The only time we ever had damage, other than like my books breaking a mug, is one time I came home from work and the bathroom faucet was running and it had overflowed. And
Really?
we have our sink is in an antique dresser for the vanity, and it got the wood soaked, and luckily it dried out okay, but that one disturbed me, and I did speak out loud and acknowledge that. I think I said, what in the H are you doing, you know?
Well, it sounds like they agreed and didn't do it anymore.
Yeah, that's the only time that happened. And I have had radio in my office move off of stations occasionally, but it is an old style. It's not a digital tuner. It's like an analog tuner. And it's possible that could just be moving on its own and not paranormal. But as far as having radios turn off and on and the stations change, not really.
So, go ahead, Barbara.
There was one that didn't like your choice of sports teams, right?
Correct. Liked Cleveland. Did not like my Detroit Tigers. On more than one occasion, we have come in, and actually we had some furnace tuning up done before we moved in. And the furnace guy, when I talked to him, he said, did you leave a radio on by any chance? Yeah, he had the key and came in. I said, no. And he said, yeah, I came in and there's a ball game on the radio, turned up quite loud and nobody's here. And I said, no. I said, that does happen. And yeah, the station would change to a Cleveland Indians baseball game.
Well,
more than one occasion.
They like Cleveland.
Yeah, you'd think they'd have better taste, but yeah, my
well, as long as baseball players.
My apologies to any Indians fans out there.
As long as the baseball players don't start coming out of the cornfields, you're probably okay.
Yeah, then we're okay.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. It's interesting that you have a house like that, but when I get to thinking about it, I wouldn't want to have anything like that. I'm happy with mine.
Yeah, I guess I'm just so used to it, Henry. And at first, I was very disconcerted. I'd never had interest in the paranormal. I didn't really believe any of this, and it really was life-changing for me. And in a way, it's been a very, very positive experience. And it has calmed down. It's more a sporadic. We might go a couple months and nothing happens, and then maybe 3 or 4 days in a row we'll have something. It's just very kind of hit and miss now, and it used to be very, very regular.
So, how much activity has your wife seen?
She has encountered a lot of it. She has heard what she thought was me moving around or whatever when I was maybe outside or maybe down in my office, and she thought I was walking upstairs. She's encountered that. Her probably one that bothered her is one time, I think it was in the morning, she was getting dressed. I was already at work, and she has a pewter mug that belonged to her father, and it's on a highboy dresser in our bedroom, and that mug flew off the highboy dresser, took out a framed photo of her mom and dad. This all fell on the floor with some force. Wow. And yeah, that one bothered her, and it broke the glass of the photo, but it did not damage the photograph, fortunately, because it's actually her parents were married.
Wow.
And during World War II, and those are the original photos.
Wow.
Yeah, that is pretty significant.
Yeah, somebody ought to write a book about living with ghosts, because it's not all bad, and you could have the positive stories of, well, it's not that bad. It's like having a roommate, and sometimes they act up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes you just want to, hey, get your act together, but
well, after that, you started having activity. You started doing a lot of research, and you found out a whole lot about it. You found, like I say, you found a gun in the basement, and you linked the story to it. You found out it was a stopover for the Underground Railroad.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting that you was able to come up with all this.
And we were very lucky because actually a team from the Ohio Historical Society in the early 80s, they went to every county in Ohio and they researched, I forget how many, 6 or 10 properties that the county officials selected. Our house was one of them that was selected for Williams County. So as far as the date it was built and some of the owners and so forth, that was kind of handed to us on a silver platter. That file was in our public library.
Wow.
In other parts, I had to work harder, going through property records and looking up biographical information. But that file was a good start. And
did you have to, I guess, sift through or dig things out in the basement to find a lot of the other stuff?
The gun, actually, our grandson found that as a flintlock pistol barrel, and that was found in the basement, kind of beneath one of the windows. Just, the basement really hadn't been used for anything significant for decades, and just gathered dirt in the corner. This is just this rusty gun barrel.
Nope.
That was interesting. And there was a young boy who drowned in the creek behind the house back in the 1950s. And I'm not sure just what, but a lot of his toys and so forth were left in the house.
Wow. Well, now your basement, was it poured concrete and stone, or was it a dirt floor? What was it like?
It's a brick floor. And part of it, they had poured a very poor concrete over the brick, but we've been able to peel that up. And the original brick floor, basically that room has not changed since 1835. And it was the original kitchen to the house and still has the hearth. It's an amazing room.
So it's got a big old hearth where they used to have a pot that they would move over on top of the fire and stuff?
Exactly, and it is kind of designed as a cooking fireplace. It's kind of shallow, and you could have had, kept things warming on the coals kind of at the front and so forth.
Wow. I know one farmhouse that I used to investigate all the time. Their kitchen had one of those big old fireplaces with the wrought iron or the arms that you put a pot hanging on it and you can move it over and into the fireplace and stuff like that. It was modernized to where it had stove and refrigerator and all that now, but it still had stuff because it was built in 1862 or something like that. And it's a pretty interesting house. So, but it's no longer there. It's been torn down.
That happens so often to the older buildings.
Yep, sure does.
Kind of makes you want at some point to try a metal detector, although you might find some things you don't want to find.
Yeah, we actually have metal detected the property, and the owners, the family that bought the house in 1869, and we bought it from their descendants. He was a carpenter. We found a lot of odds and end carpenter tools, like a old style level. We have found old drill bits, a lot of odds and ends farming implements, and in digging around, like we found a vanilla extract bottle, and by the inscription on it, the company, I believe, is out of Cincinnati. We had it pegged between 1872 and 1875. So we have found some interesting things that way.
Well, that area way back then had to have been real rural. I assume that maybe stagecoaches run past there, and
this house is built on the old Fort Wayne to Detroit Trail. It was an old Indian trail. It would have been the first road, and this house is very, very early. It's kind of amazing. It's a brick house that early, because this is the Great Black Swamp. But pretty rural. But yeah, that road, and it's a U.S. highway today.
That's 127.
Yes.
Same one that runs past my house. It runs through Eaton, so it's only about a block from me. That's pretty interesting, though. And you say it was Fort Wayne to where in Michigan? Fort Wayne
to Detroit.
To Detroit?
Fort Wayne to Detroit Trail. And I assume they probably would have in the early days had some stagecoaches and so forth would have run through here on the days, especially maybe before this area was settled, just kind of passing through.
Well, now, Fort Wayne's in Indiana, so the highway then would have come over into Ohio and curved back up to...
Yeah, and this section's 127, but actually the Fort Wayne to Detroit Trail in Indiana, it's Route 37, and in Ohio, part of it's Route 2, part of it's 127, and then once it gets into Michigan, we've actually followed it, and a lot of it is just back country roads in Michigan, but segments are on major highways.
Wow.
And it's pretty interesting to trace it.
Huh.
Okay, I'm learning a lot here. There's a swamp, or was a swamp, in Ohio, Michigan?
Is the Great Black Swamp in northwest Ohio. So this area of the state was the last to be settled because of that. Basically, they had to drain the swamp to get... It's great farmland now, but it was very difficult to settle.
Wow.
So how far away are you from the Great Lake?
We're about probably a little over 50 miles from Lake Erie.
Oh, wow. That's close.
Yeah, my wife's sister and brother-in-law lives up there, not too far from the lake, and I assume that the highway that they're on runs over toward Indiana too. So,
and we're actually pretty close to the Ohio Turnpike.
Okay. That runs east and west.
Yes.
Yeah, that's probably what they're close to. because I know she works in Cleveland, so she has a pretty good trek going back and forth to work every day.
So there's something called the Toledo War?
Yes. Actually, one of the reporters that worked for me at the paper, it did some research on that. And they literally had people, militias out with guns and so forth. And it was all about a 10-mile strip of Ohio that was claimed by, that's now the northern Ohio. It was claimed by both Michigan and Ohio. The idea was to have the outlet of the Maumee River going into Lake Erie to have the bay. And it was settled. Michigan was given the Upper Peninsula in return for relinquishing that strip.
Oh, so you're responsible for yuppers.
Exactly. You can blame us Northern Ohioans. It's about a 10-mile strip running west from Toledo to the Indiana line.
Right.
And it's not quite even, so it's a little bit off from being straight east-west. And it messed things up. I mean, even today our roads hit that point and they'll jog, and there's parts that have been areas that were once in Michigan that then became Ohio. So to research, you have to go into old Michigan records. Kind of interesting, yeah.
Huh. Wow.
That's a fascinating topic. And they were fighting. Were they really fighting, or they just were posturing more than anything?
There was some violence, but it was mainly posturing. But they did call out militias and threaten actual battles. And the government actually stepped in to stop any bloodshed and reach that compromise.
Wow.
Very interesting.
Yeah, totally interesting.
Oh, history's wonderful. I love history.
Well, I mean, I realized that area was glacial at some point, but you never expected a swampy area that close, that far north. That I realized that probably Lake Erie caused a lot of that too, correct?
Yeah, and actually, I live on one of the old Lake Erie lake shores. The lake was much larger, and that really, the swamp is what was once Lake Erie when Lake Erie was larger. And just right out, our house was built on a sand ridge that at one time was the lake shore of Lake Erie.
Wow. Well, now, when they drained the swamp, did they find a lot of, like, dinosaur bones and stuff like that?
There was some of that found. Some interesting things. I know a few years ago, doing a road project, they uncovered one of the original corduroy roads. I believe it was like the old Vistula Road. It was in Michigan at the time, now northern Ohio. And it was so muddy that they found layers of these logs. They just laid the logs across the mud so the wagons could get across. As they sank, they just laid more logs. Huh. And the mud preserved these logs. And as they were redoing the road, they uncovered this stretch of the old corduroy road. I thought that was fascinating.
Wow.
A lot of Native American presence here, too. We find a lot of artifacts on the property here.
Wow. I tell you, when you start doing a lot of research, it's amazing at the stuff that you find out that you wouldn't have known that was really there. All right, our time is dwindling down. We got like 4 minutes left. So, Barbara, you got any more questions, or Jeff?
I've been enjoying the heck out of this. I mean, well, Don is one of those guests where, he talks, you feel like it's been 5 minutes and the whole 2 hours is gone. So he's like the book version of Thomas Wortman.
Speaking of Thomas, I think it's another 3 or 4 weeks or something like that, we're going to have Thomas on too, I believe. So we really like him. He's the MUFON director of Ohio, and he has all kinds of information on that stuff. So.
Oh, Barbara, you remember the Northridge earthquake, right?
Yes.
Apparently, I just got a notification that Preston Dennett, who's also been a guest on our show and should have him back, he's done a show that apparently there were UFOs in that area. I'm going to have to watch that video after the show. Oh. Check it out.
Called Northridge? Is that what you said?
Northridge earthquake. It was this massive earthquake that hit before I moved out here. My brother still lived out here at that time. And it took out like tons of, residences when, it took out these massive sections of highway north of the San Fernando Valley to the point that like they flattened, they were risen highways. They weren't just on the ground. So when they broke off their pillars, they were like flattening traffic beneath it. So a lot, and there's an entire little section of highway dedicated to a motorcycle cop that got killed up during that.
Wow. All right.
History.
Our time is dwindling right on down. We got 2 minutes. Do you want to give out all your information and where they can find you and follow you?
Sure. Of course, I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook, both as myself and as Faded Banner Publications. If you want to read about me, check out my books, my blog, go to fadedbanner.com. My weekly newspaper column also serves as my blog. You can check out my books there. I met a ghost at Gettysburg. I met more ghosts. I hope very soon that Gettysburg archives open up. I can get my book on the 107th Ohio Regiment at Gettysburg done. And I'm working on another paranormal book I haven't titled yet, but it's based on some of the research, like the after-death communications that I was talking about. So I'll have updates on all those things there, too, at fadedbanner.com.
All right. Again, stay on until after we're off. We'll talk with you for a minute. And okay. Geoff, who's our guest next week?
I have no idea.
Oh.
I'm not Tabby Cat. If I'd been aware you were going to ask that, I probably would have looked that up.
It's Lyle Blackburn.
Oh, okay. I had no idea about it. Okay, cool.
With that, we got to run. We'll see everybody next week at the same time. So this is Henry Foister.
Jeffrey Gould.
Barbara Duncan.
Good night, everybody.
And the clock chimes the toll.
You've been listening to the Paranormal View on the ParaX Radio Network. Join us again next week at the same time for more of the Paranormal